US President Donald Trump has ordered that all American flags be flown at half-mast at the White House and other public buildings across the country until sunset on Sunday to honour the victims, and we're still praying for everyone involved. Moving on, Donald Trump is calling for billionaire George Soros to face criminal charges, accusing him of backing violent protests across the country. Trump posted on Truth Social, George Soros and his wonderful radical left son should be charged with RICO because of their support of violent protests and much more, all throughout the United States of America. We're not going to allow these lunatics to rip apart America anymore, never giving it so much as a chance to breathe and be free. Soros and his group of psychopaths have caused great damage to our country. That includes his crazy West Coast friends. Be careful, we are watching you. Of course, Donald Trump ends that post with thank you for your attention to this matter. But Hilary, there are plenty of concerns after we saw so many violent protests break out across America, university campuses, plenty of pro-Palestine protests, and a lot of concern about who was potentially backing these protests. What do you make of Trump's warning there?
Yes, actually, the ruling, the RICO, it really addresses usually more organized crime. But of course, he's using it in this instance with regard to these organized protests. And Gabriella, I really do think that President Trump and the administration are correct on this, because when you look at any of these protests, the protesters have the same kind of signs. They're wearing the same kind of outfit. The ones that were the pro-Palestine with the same, checkered scarves, and those that actually in camp have the same colored tents. So there's been a lot of speculation, yes, across the media that this is some kind of organized initiative. And then also I've seen interviews of some of these protesters when they were calling Donald Trump a fascist, and they were interviewed saying, "What do you mean?" And about 10 of these people said, "Well, that's what we were told to say." So been instructed by someone, they're there by someone. And when I was in New York City last year, I'll never forget being in a hotel where they were protesting outside, and the police were rolling their eyes saying, we see the same people everywhere. They're just shipped in everywhere. And that was actually from the police outside. So I do think he's on the right track here, President Trump.
Yeah, well, we'll watch this space very closely. Now, former Vice President Kamala Harris's fundraising events for the DNC have underperformed, according to Axios. Who would have thought? While the party is still recovering debts from her failed presidential campaign, Axios says that the total money raised from the events that she's been holding, that has been disappointing. Well, Hilary, I think we could have told them that.
Yes, absolutely. And it is purported, Gabriella, that now the war chest, the Republican war chest, is about 300 million. And going into the midterms, the Democrats only have, are you ready? 13 million.
Wow.
So they're trying to, they've got a lot of catching up to. It's not even going to be a fair fight. And obviously, don't forget, only came out after the campaign that all of these major stars that had spoken on her behalf for Kamala, they actually were paid. So they were just making money. I mean, if they really supported her or not. And so I think that's very shallow as well. Whereas, as we know, President Trump, or Donald Trump at the time, or former President Trump then, he had all these stars coming out of their own volition and their own will and donating their time. That's a vast difference, and a vast difference in commitment.
Absolutely, and it's what's translate. I think people could see who was telling the truth, who was potentially paid to say a certain message. But Donald Trump has held a marathon cabinet meeting, went for 3 hours and 17 minutes. And during the meeting, RFK Jr. says that he believes the HHS believes that they have found interventions which caused a massive spike in autism in children. Just listen to this.
We're finding certain interventions now that are clearly, almost certainly causing autism. And we're going to be able to address those in September.
So there has to be something artificially causing this, meaning a drug or something. And I know you're looking very strongly at different things, and I hope you can come out with that as soon as possible.
We will.
So 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in 31 or 34 or 12 if it's a boy. Can you imagine that? 1 in 12. That's for a boy.
On average, 12.5 boys.
It's not even believable that could be. And that was 1 in 10,000 not so long ago.
Hilary, this is something that RFK Jr. has been speaking about for a long time and promised that he'd be looking into.
Yes, this is part of the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again. And a few things here. One thing that's very interesting, actually, is Amish children, and those are the Mennonites that really do not participate in regular society. They don't eat junk food. They're not getting vaccines. They're eating literally off the land because they grow their own vegetables and fruits, etc. Do you know there are almost no instances of autism, no instances of cancer whatsoever? So we know it's something. Yes, it is incredible. It's to do with something to do with modern society. Now, there are those on the other side, actually, who do say, well, it's just that our detection methods are more superior now, and we know how to detect autism, whereas we didn't before. But it is a dreadful statistic. And as we just heard, 1 in 12, and it basically didn't exist in the 1970s. All I can say, mother of children, I only gave my children fruits, vegetables, no junk food, proteins. Don't give your junk food, and don't eat chemicals.
Well, I'm looking for. Yes, good advice, great parenting, and I'm looking forward to the findings that are going to be released in September. But Hilary, finally to the UK, 57% of Britons say that immigration is one of the most important issues facing the country. This is according to a YouGov poll. Also, 54% of Britons say that the recent protests outside hotels being used to house asylum seekers that we've been covering here on this program, that those protests are justified. This, of course, comes as Keir Starmer's government is facing an existential crisis over immigration. It loses the confidence of the people, clearly, including its own voters, over the out-of-control boat arrivals.
Yes, since his administration has been in, two-tier Keir Starmer, 52,000 illegals have entered into the UK, Gabriella. Isn't that the equivalent of an invasion? And what I always say is, could you even contemplate all those that died defending the UK from the Nazis? What if we'd let the Nazis in and given them a free hotel and free food and free cell phones? I mean, that would have been incomprehensible. And then think about this. This is the absolutely dreadful policy they're talking about now because of the protests outside of these hotels, like Epping in Essex, where there's mothers and they weren't organized, by the way, because going back to Soros here in the United States, I do think he's got a global reach. There are organized protesters over there as well. These mothers had local signs. But because of all the protests outside of the hotels, where it's obviously very concentrated in terms of illegals, the new government policy is called the scatter policy, where what they're doing is they're going to landlords in houses where they have apartments in like old big Victorian buildings and old houses, etc. And they're giving them 5 years rent, almost double what they would normally rent for, and paying for all the repairs. So landlords, people just like regular people, they need the money, they want the money. But this scatter principle, and at the same time, when you have 1.2 million in the UK waiting on the housing list, it is just unconscionable.
Absolutely. Hilary Fordwich, president and founder of Strelmark, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely, Gabriella. Pleasure.